Hi, welcome to Hey It Gets Better. I'm Katie Watson, and this is the first episode. In today's episode, I chat with Frankie Cotton. Frankie is an amazing woman. She is the CEO and founder of her own company, Let's Be Frank. She is also the creator and the host of the podcast, Women on Top. This episode is full of great advice and lots of wisdom. We discuss how Frankie got to where she is now, why she created Women on Top, and she gives some brilliant advice to everyone who is starting their career now. I hope you take away something from her episode. Hi Frankie, thanks for being my first guest on Hey It Gets Better. Would you just like to take a second to introduce yourself to all the listeners?
Hi Katie, yes of course. So my name is Frankie Cotton and I run a growth and innovation agency called Let's Be Frank, which I founded in 2017. And I also am the host and executive producer of a podcast called Women on Top.
Fantastic. I love Women on Top. If you haven't listened to it, I would definitely recommend it. It is one of the inspirations behind this podcast. And it's been one of the most inspiring things I've listened to.
Oh, thank you very much. That's really lovely to hear. It's been a journey, launching Women on Top. You definitely don't launch a podcast to get rich. It's certainly not straight away. It's a bit of a labor of love, I suppose. But it's been a really fun adventure. You know, I feel very privileged to have such great conversations with women, most of who are business leaders, or leaders in their own field. So perhaps they are activists, they founded charities, or, you know, they're creators and authors, and just having conversations with those women about how they've managed their careers, how they manage their personal finances is just great. So yeah, I feel blessed quite often having had those conversations and having them so frequently.
I think from an outside perspective, it looks like you really are in a good place in life right now. And I don't know if it'd be wrong to assume that you managed to get there without any challenges or hiccups along the way.
That's interesting. Because, yeah, I mean, there's two things, I suppose. The first question is to say that it can look from an outside perspective like things are going well. And, you know, whilst I think that I can't really complain in this, you know, in terms of how the world is right now, you know, we're living through a pandemic, which nobody was expecting, and people's health is certainly the number one priority. And so I feel like I can't, you know, I can't complain at all. I feel very lucky right now, but also it has been tough. You know, it's tough when you run your own business and you think, okay, how's the economy going to work out long term? You know, how are my clients going to do? Are they actually going to make it through this tough time? And will we come out together the other side? Will they stop taking services? You know, you really have no idea. So it's just, well, I think in business, you've always got shaky foundations to a point. You know, at any point, anything could be taken away from you and you can't get too comfortable. But it feels particularly shaky, those foundations right now. So I would say that it might look from an outside perspective that everything is under control, but I'm probably just a bit like a duck or a swan in the water and underneath, sort of pedaling away.
I think that's really interesting. And I think a lot of people, especially with social media, they present an image that everything is going swimmingly fine, but they're also a bit like a duck in the water, just kind of plodding along.
Yeah, and that's why, you know, you can't believe everything you read on social media. And whilst I do think that social media has been amazing during this time, like really, really amazing. I know I felt very connected to people all around the world. You know, when you think about things like Black Lives Matter, you know, the movement that was sparked globally when so many people were actually stuck, isolated pretty much at home. But the fact that we're all so connected to have that conversation and to feel how everybody was feeling, that in itself, I think, shows how amazing social media is at connecting us. But also it's good to take time out and to make sure that you control it and it doesn't control you, because when it controls you, you're at liberty to just watching what everybody else is doing online and forgetting that it's a highlight reel and you're not really seeing what's going on behind the scenes. And it prevents you from showing up in your own life kind of consciously and with awareness and doing things on purpose in the way that you want to, you can become too easily influenced, or one can become too easily influenced.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. Especially with the news, I had to take a little break a few weeks back, and I felt really bad for doing so because I thought, I need to be informed. I have a duty really to look at all the stories and pay attention to my surroundings. But sometimes it can just get that bit overwhelming, and you do need to make sure that you are okay.
Yeah, absolutely. You do. You need to take care of you first before you do anything else. And yes, I know what you're saying about having a duty to keep up with the news and understanding what's going on in the world. But if it's affecting you, and in a big way, that you don't owe anybody anything. It's perfectly fine to take some time out and to take a break. And often when you do, you come back feeling so much better afterwards, and have so much more clarity. And yeah, I'm a real advocate for taking breaks. I think some of the best decisions I've ever made have come after, like a long holiday or taking some time out or something. And then, yeah, you sort of come back and I tend to make the best decisions afterwards.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people right now who would love to have a holiday and take a break. And I think it's important, like that is totally okay to do, obviously within the restrictions, but having a break is really important.
Yes, if and when you can. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it's crazy. So we both went to the same university. I've just graduated in this sort of pandemic, and you graduated in 2011?
Yes, I did, and yeah.
From where you are now, I can imagine, like, as a graduate, you did not know that in a couple of years' time, you would have your own amazing podcast where you show the talents of fantastic women, and you would be running your own company. Did you know that when you were graduating, or did you have no idea?
No, well, it's funny. So thinking back to when I graduated, so yeah, you're right. It was 2011. So it was just, we were still recovering really from the financial crisis of 2008. So there was that double dip recession and things still weren't looking great. It was better. It was better than graduating in 2009, probably, but it was still quite tough. And for me personally, I was a part of the New Theatre at Nottingham Uni. So I spent the summer in Edinburgh at the Fringe Festival,
wow.
Kind of living my last few months of student life and living it up. And then, yeah, reality sets in come September, and you think, wow, what am I going to do with my life? But no, in answer to your question, did I know that I would be launching my own podcast or running my own podcast? No, I don't think I even knew what a podcast was in 2011. They certainly weren't as popular as they are now. But yeah, it's not been a straight path, but I don't think that any path is particularly straight. I think you have to seize opportunities that are presented to you in the moment and just kind of just trust something deeper, something instinctual in your gut, and just know and sense that you will take you in the right direction, but just be really open and aware to opportunities as they pop up.
Yeah, I think that's really important, to trust your own gut, especially when you graduate. Sometimes there's a temptation just to sort of follow a path, get a job in an industry will be safe, not necessarily where you'll be happy, and just follow a trend that's kind of pre-established, but that's not necessarily right for everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's a really fair point, I was always a bit of a rebel, so I knew I wasn't going to follow a grad scheme type path. I know that's probably I know it's definitely what my mum wanted me to do. But I just wanted independence. I just didn't want to live at home. And I knew that I couldn't go to London. I couldn't go to, the capital city at that time, because I definitely couldn't afford to live on a graduate salary. So I decided to stay in Nottingham. So I looked for jobs locally in Nottingham, which, again, I don't think was really the plan that my parents would have had for me. But I did, and I found a job. I worked for a technology company, and I started in there business intelligence department, which was a new department in their business, and essentially was looking at, and this was, to be fair, 9 years ago, so things were slightly different then, but looking at how we could analyze data and use that data to influence commercial decisions in the business.
Yeah, I think it is interesting because, like you mentioned, your parents might have wanted you to go into a graduate scheme. And I think they are a safer option a little bit than just going into sort of unemployment or jobs hunting. But there's also like a downside to them. I personally this year didn't apply to any because when I was looking for an internship, I failed every single psychometric test I ever did.
Really? Gosh. How did you feel? That must have been quite difficult to take that over and over again. That must have been quite hard.
It does get very demoralizing. And I think anyone right now job hunting will experience that rejection coming in rapidly. And you're a bit like, ouch. But you have to keep going at it and find other ways around it. So I personally went for smaller companies that didn't do psychometric tests because I knew that didn't show my worth. I knew I was more than what this test would tell me, and I could offer so much more that wasn't being analysed in those tests. And they are great tests, but for me, I don't think it actually showed what I could do.
Well, it's good that you had the resilience to think that way. And, grad schemes are great for the people that it does suit. And that I know people who have really flourished at doing grad schemes, and they've learned so much about how businesses function, and they've really found their place in a large corporate. But for me, I always wanted to work for a smaller company anyway, because I always wanted to have more of an impact on the business. And as I say, I always kind of had a rebellious streak. So I always wanted to find a way of, I don't know, putting my mark on something and just kind of really getting my hands dirty and getting stuck in. And that's what I did from that first job that I had in Nottingham. I did that kind of all the way through my career.
I just have an image in my head of 2011 Frankie who's just graduated in some really rebellious streak.
Yeah, she's still there, in there somewhere.
It's good to challenge what people think you should do and challenge your expectations and go beyond, because I think you don't want to look back and regret not having done something.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, you don't want to look back and regret things. And I think you've just got to stick to what feels right for you. But also, that's always tricky because I know you have to balance the practicalities of things, right? So, if you want to make a decision. So, for example, if it's helpful, I can tell you the story of how I set up my business. Is that useful?
Yeah, that would be so helpful. I'd love to hear how you set up your business.
Yeah, so I actually knew that I wanted to set up my own business before I took the last full-time position that I took. So I think it must have been about 2014, 2015. I was interviewing for a company, a technology company, to be their head of marketing in the UK. And I already knew that I wanted to start my own business, but I had no idea what it was going to be or how I was going to do it. I just knew that there was something inside of me that wanted to do that. So I remember in the interview process for that job, the guy who was going to be my boss asked me, and where do you see yourself in 5 years? That typical interview question. And I said, well, I'm going to be running my own business in 5 years. And he laughed. And I thought, oh, maybe that wasn't the right decision. Maybe I shouldn't have been so honest. But then I got the job. So I think he must have respected that spark, I suppose, or that ambition. I think it was the ambition that he respected, and knew that if that's what I wanted to do for myself, then I'd be able to bring something great to the business. So I guess I had planted that seed with him from the very first moment that I'd met him. So about 2.5 or 3 years later, roughly, when I said, look, I've decided I'm going to set up my own agency. Can I phase myself out of the business in a way that works for you? In terms of, making sure there's not a huge change for, by that point I'd built a global team, and, the marketing that we're delivering was amazing. We had this great marketing engine that was delivering leads to our sales. We just rebranded. There were so many projects going on. And I said, I don't want to disrupt your business. So how can I step out in a way that actually supports you, but also for me is kind of safe? I can start to build some revenue into my own company with a friendly first client, I suppose. And yeah, he was really receptive to it. He then, I say he was really receptive. It wasn't an overnight thing. It definitely took a few months of me prodding and poking. But yeah, after probably about 3 or 4 months, we slowly made the transition.
That's so good. And I think that is really brave how you took this really, what sounds like a really good job, and you knew that you wanted to do your own thing, and you took a leap of faith and went for it.
Yeah, and I guess, so this, I guess the reason I was telling you that story was to ground what it means to start your own business in terms of practicalities, right? So that's sort of where we started. So I had known for a number of years I wanted to start my own business. So I had started saving a lot of money for probably about 2 years before I took that leap of faith. So I must have had, I can't remember exactly how much it was, but probably about £20,000 saved up, which is a lot of money. But I was saving a lot. I was saving about £1,000 a month from my salary in order to do that. So I had done that front loading. So by the time I said I wanted to start my own business, I had that cash to back me up to go and then to do it. So I think it's important to tell you that process happens way before you actually take the leap of faith, because if you take a leap of faith with no backup and no planning, you're going to get yourself into trouble really quickly. And I think there is a rhetoric in the startup or business world, which is, do your own thing, take a leap of faith, and that's great, but you've got to understand that there has to be a level of practicality to it, because you'll put yourself under undue pressure and your business won't survive very long, because cash flow is the biggest reason why businesses don't survive.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And I'm glad you spoke about how you'd saved money for it and you'd invested yourself in it by saving your own money, because often you can see these people from an outside perspective and you just think, wow, they're doing so well, they've got here so fast and they're making it all work, but you don't see the savings that goes into it and the money side, which I think is really important, because money is such a big stress and such a big worry for lots of people, especially anyone graduating right now. I'm just thinking, do I just need to get a job straight away?
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of things to consider, but I guess, as a graduate, don't put yourself under too much pressure would be the thing that I would say first. And then the second thing that I would say is, if you can educate yourself on personal finance as soon as possible, that is worth every minute and every penny that you spend in educating yourself about money. So yes, enjoy the next few years as much as you can. Work for some startups, work at different companies, get some experience. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. And that's definitely something I did for the first 3 or 4 years of my career, is that I did just, I worked really hard, but I also played really hard. I'd always be the last one at the Christmas parties, standing at the bar or whatever, don't get me wrong. I did really enjoy myself. So I think that's the big part of it, get that experience. And then the second thing is, when you're working for companies, when you're working for other people and you want to start saving for your own project or for something or for a house, is learn how to negotiate a salary and really understand how to do that and practice doing that, and practice doing it really early on. So funny story, I was given a great opportunity to do that. I was, my first salary when I came out of university was £14,000 a year. And that was the job that I took in Nottingham. What, does it seem low?
I think it seems low, but I'm living in London and it just doesn't seem as much as I thought, but maybe it's good.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't great. I had my peers who were working in London on grad schemes would have been earning probably closer to about 22,000, 24,000 at the time. But I took this job at 14,000, and I was told by the commercial director, he said, well, that's 14,000 for the first 3 months, and then it'll go up to 16,000 once you passed your probation. So probation came and went and passed with flying colours, and nobody put my salary up. So I was like, hang on a second, like, I'm not gonna, no. I just knew in that moment, if I let that first one go, then that would be it for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, there would be no negotiation, and I would have lost that first point at which to kind of put my foot down and show that I believed in my own value. So straight away, sort of three months and a day after I passed my probation, I spoke to my boss and I said, look, I was told I was going to get a pay rise. You know, where is it? And I think that started my own path of negotiation. But yeah, the earlier and the sooner you can rip that plaster off of negotiating a salary, the more that will stand you in good stead, because that's something that you can influence and you can control, especially as you get more experience. And that will really help you to build up a good financial standing that will then allow you to do whatever it is you want to do.
That is such good advice. I'm definitely going to take that on board, because when I do get asked, what do you expect to be paid in interviews and things, at the moment in my head, I'm just like, whatever you want. I don't mind. I just need, I just need a job. But it's also about knowing your own worth.
Yeah, but it can be tricky, right? It can be tricky before you've gotten a foot in the door. It can be tricky. And I don't know the kind of specifics of your situation, but I think certainly for me, I knew it wasn't a great salary to start with, but I knew it was a company in which I could progress quickly and I could, get some experience and do it in my own way. But as soon as there was that first opportunity, I went into the negotiation, and then it didn't stop from there on. Every year or every 6 months on the dot, I would be asking for more and asking for more, improving my worth and my value. And I just would recommend everybody do that.
Yeah, it does sound like a good, because I don't come from a family who's very in business, and I could never imagine asking for more money. And if you don't come from that environment and you don't have maybe like people telling you about it and you don't really know, it can feel a bit odd to just ask for more money and things like pay rises. From my perspective, I used to think they just get given to you.
Well, and this is the thing, right? You like to think that business leaders are thinking holistically about their teams, and they care about you and they care about your development. They care about how much you earn. And to a point, yes, of course they do. And some are better than others. But also for most people who run businesses, so the people who you report to as an employee, they will be looking at their bottom line costs and always trying to make sure that those costs are as low as possible. So if you show no sign of wanting to go anywhere, if you show no sign of asking for something, they're not necessarily going to offer it to you, because why would they? If you're carrying on and you're delivering what they need you to deliver at a certain level, especially with smaller to mid-sized companies, I think larger corporates are much better because they tend to have a sort of procedure about how you go through getting promoted and different pay brackets, etc. But if you work at a small or mid-sized company, they won't have any of that. So they won't necessarily offer you anything. So if you don't ask, you're really not going to get. So get into the habit of asking. But I think the key is to know your value and to always be super, super aware of what it is that you need to deliver. So it's about really understanding your job responsibilities and understanding how your output contributes to the business objectives. So what is the business trying to achieve? And most businesses are always trying to achieve revenue growth. Almost certainly, without a doubt, the business will be looking for new customers and to make more money. So if you can show how what you do contributes to that, then you're onto a winner. You're not negotiating because you're saying, I want more money. You're saying, this is how I bring more money to you. So can you please reward me for helping you do that, and enjoy it. enjoy it. Don't worry about negotiation, take it too seriously. I've always tried to, whether it's sales or salary negotiation or whatever, just always sort of have a bit of a smile and a twinkle in your eye, and just enjoy it, and don't take it too seriously, and know that you always have options and you have choices. If things don't go your way, you can look about going somewhere else or doing something else, but don't make it a negative or a standoff. Don't make it, negotiation should never be a standoff. It's not you versus the other person. The point of it is for you both to agree on something that's going to make things really work for the pair of you. It's about finding a compromise that means you can both move forward in a better way. So I think if you can come at it from that perspective and really bring, your boss or whoever you're negotiating with on board with you, and have a bit of fun, then it makes the process a lot better. It's a much nicer experience.
It does sound like, it can be a positive experience. And I think, it doesn't have to be as scary as people think. And I was going to ask, because, life isn't just about business and your career. And how did you find sort of having a good working career and then balancing that with your personal life?
That's a good question. I think, I would say that that's not something I was very good at for a while. So I would say that maybe for the first 2 or 3 years of my career, as I said, I kind of worked hard and play hard, and I had a lot of fun. And then when I moved to London and I was given this job for this technology company, which was high pressure, and I was the first woman in the UK team. I was the first and only woman the whole time I was there to be in management. And I was also the youngest in management as well, right? So I felt all of these different pressures, and that definitely got to me. And I think that combined with, it also required a lot of travel because it was an international company. It meant that I didn't show up for things in my personal life perhaps as well as I should have. And that's difficult. I think it's a tricky balance that we'll all have to figure out for ourselves. And I think that I definitely went too far one way, which was work was all I did. And I'm trying to get a healthier balance now, and bring more creativity and fun back into my life. But I would say it's a personal experience that we'll all go through, and we only find where our boundaries should be once we've crossed them. So, we all cross our boundaries and then go, okay, no, I should have stepped back before then. And that's how you figure things out. You don't find your boundaries by coming near them and never crossing them.
I think that's good to hear, that it's not something only an individual experience, but something that everyone has to learn and has to experience.
No, it does. Yeah, you can only learn by making mistakes. Absolutely. So, I can say, yes, I didn't have a good balance, but everybody's balance will be different. And the thing is as well is that balance changes over time. Like sometimes that you might have a personal situation that requires a lot more of your time and effort and energy, and you should focus on that. And other times might be a time where you really double down and focus on your business or your career, and you should focus on that instead. So I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect balance. I think it's more about finding a way to trust yourself, and know yourself, and know when things feel unhealthy within yourself. And then you'll know when to pull back in certain areas, or when you should invest more time in certain areas.
I think that's really good advice, especially now, considering the current situation. People might feel the need to kind of take that time to really look after themselves, and they're not working as much as they used to, or they're not putting in as much effort as they imagined they should be doing. But it's a personal thing, and there's no sort of, you have to spend 12 hours a day working and you can spend the rest on your free time. Life doesn't work like that.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be flexible and adapt to what's going on in the world. Like we're saying about with the pandemic, it's changed situations for everybody, and in so many different ways as well. It's difficult to even generalize because everybody's experience is so vastly different. But yeah, I think it's more about, if there was something that I've learned throughout my career so far, and particularly since launching my own business, is that nothing is certain. Absolutely nothing is certain. So don't try and control anything. Just be willing to respond, and and just have some trust in yourself and be able to come home to yourself and then just respond as you think is right to whatever circumstance or situation occurs.
Yeah, that's really, really good advice. And I'd love to talk about how about Women on Top and about how your own experience was being the only female in a management role, how you came up with Women on Top and how that experience influenced your message.
That's a really good question. So I think when I left full-time employment, and well, I never really left full-time employment because I employed myself. But when I left somebody else's business and started my own business, it was really quite a time to examine what had happened. It was sort of like stopping after 6-7 years and just going, hold on a minute, what happened there? That was like chaos at 1,000,000 miles an hour. As I started my own business, it made me really question, what are my values? What do I care about? What kind of business do I want to create? What kind of clients do I want to serve? What's the bigger purpose of the business? And that led me on really a path to understand what had happened throughout my own career and what was a product of my environment and what had I learned versus what did I know to be true. And they were two different things. And I don't think that my experience was particularly, I think there were moments of real sexism and misogyny, but I also think it's that, a couple of individuals and a couple of experiences of that combined with systemic inequality for women in the workplace. And that led to probably what is actually on average a very, very average experience for a woman in their career. But I was really unpicking it and thinking, hang on a minute, like, should I have a lack of confidence because that didn't happen? Or, was I not really good enough? Or was that actually more of a systematic issue? Was that more of was that their issue actually? That guy who bullied me, was it him? Maybe it was him. Like, I need to let go of that experience and not let that affect the rest of my working career because the issue was him, it wasn't me. And so I kind of went through this process of trying to really process some of the things that had happened. And I did a couple of things. I set up a company with a co-founder called Found and Flourish, which was around supporting female entrepreneurs. And I was there for about 18 months. So building the startup in its early phase. But then we went our separate ways. And then after that, I decided that I wanted to continue with female empowerment, really, but more in a way that was actually creating connection and solidarity for women by sharing women's stories, and not just the negative stories and the negative data around how inequality exists, but taking it further than that and thinking, okay, well, in spite of those, how can we take back control of what we want and live our lives on purpose and, take control of our personal finances and our careers and our business and essentially, show up and make the world a better place than we found it. And that's what Women on Top really is about. It's about having conversations with women who, have certainly experienced systemic sexism because it exists and it's unavoidable, and who have managed to come through that and come out the other side and do amazing things through the work that they do. And it's been a cathartic experience for me, and I hope that it's been good for our listeners too.
Yeah, I have to say, I keep raving about it to everyone I know because it's been such a good experience to listen to as a young woman who's just sort of entering the working world. And you just get inspired by how many amazing women there are out there that actually, if I wasn't listening to Women on Top, I would have no idea about. And there's definitely a side to the professional world that I do see, which is sort of straight white men in suits and ties. And they assume that is what business is. But having listened to Women on Top, I can see that there is so much space for creativity, female empowerment, and just the beauty of like women in power doing what they love and creating amazing products that do change the world.
Oh, thank you. That's really kind. But I'm really glad that you feel that way, because one of the reasons, why I started the podcast is because my own personal career, every single person who I'd worked for, who was a business owner or senior management, and I'm talking like C-level within a business, had been white and had been a man. Every single one, without fail. And so then if you exist in a world where the only people who you see and hear having conversations about business and about money are white men, then you think that that's a conversation just for men. And it's not a conversation just for men. It's a conversation for women too. And, you know, people of all, you know, backgrounds and races and, you know, genders and expressions. It's a place for everybody. But you can start to assume if you don't see it and you can't hear it, that it's not for you. And that's not true. So I hope that Women on Top helps others to find their voices and to know that they can be a part of that conversation and are an equal participant in that conversation. Because, you know, what Women on Top is, it's women talking to other women about money, business and careers. And where else, unless you work for a really large corporate that's quite progressive and has a variety of people working there, you might never experience that or hear two women having that conversation. I certainly didn't throughout my career. So that's what I'm hoping that Women on Top does and is for people.
Yeah, I think it is such an amazing thing what you're doing and how you sort of saw what was going on, and you could have just left it and you could have just thought, okay, that's how the world works. But you didn't, and you actually went to actively change it.
That's very kind of you to say that. I guess we all just try and do our bit in various ways that we think we can help. And yeah, for me, that was it. And like I say, you know, podcasting doesn't get you rich. It will, hopefully it will one day. And it certainly worked for Joe Rogan. But I think, you know, certainly, as I said, the early days are a labor of love. So you have to have a real purpose that's greater than just, you know, making money or something for yourself. And yeah, it's been a pleasure to do it. And I just hope that not everyone at work has access to a mentor. And so I kind of feel like this is like having a group of amazing mentors that you can access at your fingertips on your phone and listen to, you know, whatever it is that you're thinking or worried about. There are, you know, we've done like 41 episodes now, so there are so many different topics that are explored. So yeah, you can just dip in and kind of get that mentoring advice from somebody who's been there and done it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think as well, access to mentorship and things like that can be quite difficult to have, especially if you're early in your career and you just don't know how to get a mentor. I think though things like Women on Top, they provide an insight that's much needed for people who feel like they're on the outside, because they are conversations, like you said, that everyone should be having, no matter what your gender, your race, or your background is. You should be able to access all this information, and your potential should not be limited by anything.
Definitely. And it's easy when you know, when you first start in the workplace, it's very easy to trust what everybody says to you because everybody seems more experienced than you are. So everyone around you, you'll just absorb what they have to say like a sponge. And not all of it is great advice. And sometimes people give you advice because they couldn't do the thing that you want to do. You know, I was told that you know, at one point I couldn't get a job that I wanted to do, and I was looking for like an official promotion for a job that I'd been doing unofficially for a while, and was told that I couldn't get this promotion. And it was limited by that person's experience of their own career, not what I was capable of. So it's important to be able to qualify where you're taking advice from as well, and be able to have enough voices and mentors in your space to know that actually you can identify somebody and think, actually, no, do you know what? The advice you're giving me is actually not helpful for me, and I'm not going to take it.
Yeah, it's really good advice, and I think what you're doing is amazing. And I'd really like to ask, sort of as in a very general question, to anyone right now who just feels a bit like they've been given really bad cards in life and nothing is going their way. They've got more of the downs in life than the ups. Because it's very easy to get into that sort of slump when you're being hit with rejections and things aren't going how you imagined it. there any advice you'd give to someone in that position? Obviously, like, everyone's circumstances can be very different, but do you have any advice you'd maybe give to someone?
Something that I always think about is that the whole world is changing in every moment. So in that sense, things will always change. So as much as things can feel really, really tough in the moment and really all-consuming, and sometimes that feeling can last for weeks or months or maybe even years, is know that change is always happening, and that it's unavoidable, and that should be a good thing, because it always then gives you some hope along the way. But I would say there are also some practical things, and again, these are the only things that we learn through our own experiences. So, knowing if we're getting enough sleep, trying to be as healthy as we can, or whatever healthy means to us, whatever makes us feel good, and just trying to find those things in life that we know help us and pick us back up and create positivity, and the people that are supportive and really foster that positivity within us, rather than the things that take from us, whether sometimes that can be drinking, it can be spending too much time on social media. There are all sorts of sabotaging behaviors that we all do. And it's just a case of, I think, being really aware of what those are, and then aware of what the reset things are that make us feel better, and just trying to do more of the things that make us feel better, even if sometimes they feel harder in the moment. And like, the more difficult choice is that we know that in the long run we'll feel better. And yeah, that would be the thing that I've done, or I've learned to do when I've found things difficult. Yeah, and just stay connected as well. I mean, for me, when I'm not feeling great, I tend to retreat, and I don't really want to talk to anyone. And, but try, even if that's your default mode, try to remember how connected all of humanity is. We're so connected, and everything that we all do affects each other, and none of us are isolated, because, even when it comes to the food that we eat, somebody else has prepared it before it's got to us. If the clothes that we wear, somebody has manufactured it, somebody's designed it. We're all so interconnected. And so when I really feel stressed or anxious, I try to remember that actually it's not just my problem. I'm not shouldering this alone. We're all connected. And if I have a problem, it's the whole world's problem, and that just helps lighten the load a bit, and kind of think, okay, it's fine. It'll all work out in the end.
Yeah, that's a really good mindset to have, I think. So I think that's all my questions for you today, Frankie. Thank you so much for having this interview, and the advice you've given to everyone has just been fantastic. Is there anything else? I'd like to just give you an opportunity to add anything if you want to add it.
Thanks, Katie. No, it's been really great to talk to you. And yeah, I think this is it's great that you're doing this. So well done you for forging on in a pandemic, and going ahead. In terms of, is there anything I'd like to leave everyone on? I guess this is funny, because that I ask people this question at the end of my podcast, and I put them on the spot. What would I say? I would say that anything, you can survive anything. Whatever you think that you can't survive, or whatever fear that you have, I can pretty much you will survive it. You will survive it. Unless it's obviously a health issue. You will survive it. Anything in your career or your business, even if you go bankrupt and lose it all. I'll be honest with you. I've made really good money. I've lost money. I lost a hell of a lot of money when I left the business that I co-founded. So that will happen, but it's okay, and you can recover, and you will survive it. So try not to live in fear of what could be, because actually, even when you experience it in reality, it's not that bad. It's really not that bad, and you can recover.
So that's all for today. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Frankie, for giving your time. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram at Hey It Gets Better. I hope you have a fantastic week, and just remember, hey, it gets better.